Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. So, on the surface, my question seems a little absurd. According to the teachings of Bruno Groening, we don't talk about the illness. We don't dwell, or it's not that we don't, it's we're unlearning the habit of talking about illness, talking about problems, dwelling on them, thinking about them, so forth and so on. So, on the surface, my question seems a little ridiculous in terms of what Bruno taught us. And interestingly enough, Bruno taught us not to talk about the symptoms of evil, such as illness, problems, burdens, etc. But did he ever say, don't talk about evil itself? Not that I'm aware of. And Bruno Groening himself spoke about the force called evil often, and he even spoke about Satan, saying he really exists, and spoke of him often. Now, when I say often, if you read a speech of Bruno Groening, maybe we're talking 5-7% of the speech is about the topic of evil, how evil operates, what it is, how we've taken it on, how to free ourselves from it. My sense is I've read how many? I think I've read 3 or 4 speeches of Bruno's all the way through, and actually I think 5 now, and in those speeches, what evil is it's a topic he keeps coming back on, touches on, and then goes to other things. That's my impression of how Bruno Groening himself taught on the topic of evil itself. On the one hand, he said, don't talk about the illness. On the other hand, he said, never forget, friends, that human beings live in between good and evil. And he made some hand gestures. I don't know exactly, something along the lines of human beings are here, and on one side is good, and on one side is evil. You decide. So that's two very strong instructions. 1, don't talk about the illness. 2, never forget that human beings live right in between good and evil. So, I'm going to share my understanding of what this means and how to apply it, and I very much would like to hear people's feedback about their understanding of the teachings of Bruno Groening. And so, my understanding is that what Bruno calls us to is to focus on the good and be vigilant and aware. As Bruno Groening said, evil is constantly trying to pull human beings off the good path. He straight up said Satan is gnawing at humanity. And he also said, meaning this work, he said, this is what it's truly about, freeing the soul from Satan's clutches. Was it clutches or claws? I think from Satan's claws. So that's when I take all the different things. Don't talk about evil, don't talk about problems, don't dwell on negative things. And then the other things where Bruno did, not talking about illness, not talking about problems, but talking about the phenomenon of evil itself. That's my understanding. Initially, what I thought it meant was just don't talk or think about anything bad at all. Now, that's the letter of the law, but that's not the spirit of the law. Sometimes we need to communicate about illnesses or burdens. Sometimes I'm involved in activism, meaning I'm involved in identifying problems in the world and doing what I can to address them. And so I need to talk about problems, but I don't need to walk around unburdening problems on everyone or talking about all the problems of the world to whoever I can like trap and like force them to listen. So those are a few of my um, understandings of, and this is a very subtle. It's a very subtle thing. Um, and that's, I think, what I'll close with is my understanding is we don't want to become overly obsessed with evil, but we also don't want to pretend that evil doesn't exist. We don't want to turn a blind eye to evil. Um, we don't want to, um, but we simultaneously don't want to dwell and obsess and overly focus on it. And sometimes I feel, as a teacher of Bruno Groening's teachings, it's actually my job to talk about evil a little bit more than I would like, because what I've observed is it's just my view that it's very under talked about. Um, and it's a part of Bruno Groening's teaching that Bruno talked about evil all the time, and yet it doesn't get talked about much. And this understanding, this awareness, and in fact, this vigilance for evil, because it comes down to our thinking. That's how evil gets us. And so, moment by moment, we have to, with each thought that comes in, we have to say, is this a thought from God, or is this a thought from evil? And so that might be the ultimate practical instruction for how to apply this teaching is to watch our thoughts. So please leave your own understanding of this, and um, that's what I make of it, is to focus on, to take in the good and be mindful. Because Bruno Groening said evil operates on this earth in a way that it doesn't operate anywhere else in all of God's creation. So here on earth, we're learning this very interesting. We're dancing with this in a very interesting environment, in an environment that's unique, according to Bruno Groening, to all of God's creation. So no wonder if it's a little confusing sometimes. And I keep saying that's the last thing I'll say. You know, the thing that's been most important to me to understand about evil is that it's sneaky, it's deceitful. Bruno Groening straight up says that evil slinks and crawls and slithers and is constantly trying to find its way into us. So we don't want to be afraid of evil, but we also don't want to pretend it doesn't exist. Turn to go about our day being like, oh, I don't have to, like everything's good. Because then we're actually not seeing, according to Bruno Groening, we're not seeing reality. If we just think, oh, everything's good, and we're literally blinding ourselves, and that's not what it's about either. All right, friends, thank you so much.